All right, everybody, what is going on? Needs more drums back in our city of Percusion. It has been quite a while since we've actually been in the city, and man, it is good to be back. I'm excited to really do some work and get the city looking a lot better than what it is now. There's so many gaps in the downtown, and there's just so much to be done. And every time I open this game, I'm very stressed. But little by little, we'll make the city look really, really good, and I'm super excited because I haven't been able to play the city in a long time. So yeah, so plans for today. So what I want to do today is I want to build out some suburbs. And I know I said that this city was going to take a little bit of a mixture between European influence and American influence. And so the European aspect is definitely, this highway is going to kind of serve as the divider between the more populated areas down here and then kind of up here, some more suburban sprawl will be happening. But I think, in terms of like these suburbs here and stuff, all of these are probably going to get upgraded to some, a little bit higher density, not super dense like tall buildings, but some little apartments or something here and there, maybe like kind of the size of some of these guys and everything. And there might be a few suburbs like over here this might stay or whatever, but yeah, some of these other areas just gonna kind of build up a little bit eventually. But yeah, for like, I want to expand out here, up into this kind of valley here, this area. This is going to become suburbs, probably some suburbs over here. But yeah, just giving the city a little bit bigger footprint so that it looks a little more developed. Whereas right now it's kind of just, a couple places here and there and nothing much is going on. So, oh well. But anyway, yeah, one sad thing though is that I actually had to get rid of the building themes mod because I tried to open the game a couple times. I had the intention of recording this video like a couple days ago, and I had, a solid couple hours, and I was like, man, I'm going to record, I'm going to build, it's going to be great. But then I opened up the game and I pressed play and it crashed every single time. So, and then I was trying to think about like, man, what was going on? I was getting a simulation error that said, array index is out of range, and I couldn't, figure out what was happening until I went into the output log file and discovered that building themes mod was causing the error, because that, it says like simulation error at building themes mod or whatever. So I was like, okay, let's try this. Long story short, trial and error, disabling, re-enabling, disabling, re-enabling with some different settings, building themes mod. And yes, it looked like that was the culprit, and it just, no matter what happened and whenever I opened the game with building themes mod and press play, it would crash. So I had to get rid of that, and that's where you can see like this random tall building here, and some of these other buildings that are just out of the theme. Like for example, these suburbs, it's really obvious, we're getting some vanilla buildings popping up. But you know what? I'd rather have this issue rather than having to not be able to play the game. So I think what we're going to have to do is kind of go back through and rebuild some of these areas, kind of plop down some buildings, which I figured I would do anyway. I just didn't want to do it yet. I wanted to kind of expand out the city and then go back and sort of clean up some of the areas, so to speak, even off camera or something. You guys don't need to see all that, but do some before and after shots maybe or something. But anyway, yeah, it seems like we're going to have to do that a little bit earlier than I originally planned, which is fine, But yeah, so going forward when we build, we're probably going to do a little bit more plopping of the buildings rather than zoning, except for areas where I know that I want a certain style. Like, for example, the mid-century modern. I also downloaded a European suburbia pack that was out as like a content creator pack for, that was probably one of the first ones out by Avanya. And that will look good, maybe up here by some of these more rural areas. But yeah, so we're gonna use some of those packs in different areas of the city, and that will, make it to where we don't have to plop down every building and we could still zone. But for the ones that we do have to, care a little bit more about how the buildings look, yeah, it's going to be a little bit more work. But there are some tips and tricks to make that not as tedious and, getting all bogged down in the details. So anyway, what we're going to do today, let's get started here. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to build a upgraded water treatment facility, because we have a demand for some more water treatment, and we only have this little makeshift area here. And so I think it's time to kind of build an area where we have, a solid water treatment plant. And that will be very, very much needed. And then second, as you can see, our education is really taking a hit. So we need some more elementary and high school buildings, and I know exactly what I want to do for that. So we're going to build a couple of those. And then finally, I like I mentioned before, I want to build out some suburbs and just, you know, kind of quickly expand the city. And, you know, not going to spend a ton of time detailing those up just because they're going to be areas that, you know, you kind of look at from afar. So, you know, not looking at those spots super close, like some of the spots in the downtown, you know, for example. So, yeah, I'm not too worried about that. And we'll go ahead and expand those out, and the city is going to start to take shape. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into a couple time lapses because there's a lot of stuff to do in one episode. But yeah, so let's go ahead and just start building. All right, so we're actually down here by the kind of the edge of the map where I envision some of the rest of the industry to be. And the first thing that I want to do is start with the water treatment facility. So this is typically one of those things that a lot of builders, I feel like, just kind of don't build or don't really prioritize, or just kind of build one off to the side and just kind of forget about it. Whereas, you know, these infrastructure projects, I think, are very important to every city. And I think that a lot of people forget that when you're building any city in City Skylines, you know, or it's kind of cool to take inspiration from, you know, real places and think about how like real cities actually need this type of infrastructure to exist, like things like power and water treatment, because, you know, without those things, I mean, we would be living in pure anarchy. But you know, so it's important, at least to me in this game, to kind of capture that, and it's some of those parts of the city that are often forgotten in builds. And, you know, people always want to focus on the downtown, and, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. Every creator has their own you know, way to play and own things that they like to prioritize. But for me personally, I do like to take a little bit of time and try to focus on some of these infrastructure areas like waste management and power and water. And so in this episode, well, in this part of the episode right now, you know, not doing too much, but again, I'm only using vanilla assets at the moment. But I was able to, I always kind of like to just splice a few of these together and just create sort of a bigger, you know, I know I always talk about a compound, so to speak, but that's kind of what we're doing here, like a big, you know, water treatment facility. And it helps just kind of throw in a few different assets together, and it sort of gives the illusion that there's some bigger development, you know, going on here, some bigger facility that's made to handle the entire city or the entire region. So using a couple of the vanilla assets, the smaller water treatment facilities kind of have those nice big water basins that you typically find in water treatment facilities, and then the bigger advanced treatment facility has, you know, those big tanks and everything. So putting a couple of these together, you're able to get sort of, you can create the effect, at least from afar, that there's a big facility down here in the edge of the map that's, you know, working to treat all of the city's water. And so obviously this needed power, and I love dragging out, you know, those power lines. They always add a nice little touch of detail, and obviously, you know, I mean, they might not stay that way forever, but for now I just kind of like to have those there, and we'll develop them as we go. Yeah, but here just placing down a few trees, because I actually do think that helps kind of make these areas, you know, come alive a little bit. And even industry areas like this, and, you know, some of the more I shouldn't even say run down, but some of the more infrastructure based, you know, facilities still have some trees around. And I know, like, there was one that I used to drive by every day when I'd go to high school. I used to drive past a water treatment facility, and it was kind of buried behind a little bit of a forest, and it was actually right next to a forest preserve. So yeah, it's totally possible that these areas, although they are more industrial based, they do tend to be surrounded by, you know, some greenery, and it's still a very natural environment. All right, and moving on from that for now, I kind of like the way that looks, and it, you know, it's just, for now, it's kind of sitting by itself, but eventually the industry and everything will expand out this way. But now I thought it was time to move on to something that I've been wanting to build since I basically started the city, and that is a better power station. So this, you might recognize this asset if you are as old as I am, back from the old SimCity 4 days. This is the old natural gas power plant from SimCity 4, and I'm so happy that one day I was just looking on the workshop, and it, you know, just so happened to find that there's actually somebody out there who's sort of recreating, or, you know, at least kind of modernizing some of these old SimCity 4 buildings. And you'll catch another one in this episode, and I know that there's actually a few more that I have subscribed. Maybe when I'm flipping through my asset collection, you'll you know, catch a couple of the other ones. But yeah, definitely intend to put as many of these in here as possible, because it's very nostalgic, and I love to see these old assets back in the game. But yeah, you know, this is again just kind of a cool way to get these power stations to look realistic. Just adding in, you know, some of the high tension power lines and some of these, like right here, this the substation, I couldn't think of the word, but yeah, these substations, you know, around power facilities really kind of help to make those entire areas look a little bit better. So just going back and deleting the old ones before we move on to our next project, which is more education infrastructure. And in this case, I wanted to build this high capacity elementary school in the pedestrian area. We were in desperate need of some more elementary education, and this seemed like a good area because we don't really have anything on, you know, this other side of the river just yet. And so I wanted to take the time to, I always kind of like to do this, and take the time to sort of build a nice little area around the school. You know, you envision that people would be sitting around kind of outside and having a little bit more open space. So creating this, I know it's very modern in this pedestrian area, but creating this, you know, modern plaza, and I added, you know, some kind of custom trees and benches, and sort of create a little plaza of my own here with some of the great little assets that are a part of the pedestrian DLC. And it's really cool. You know, it came with a lot of cool little planters and these little I guess you can just call them structures, so to speak, or, you know, pavilions or whatever you want to call them. But yeah, these cool little modern things that you can just kind of place down, and, you know, they provide a cool little you know, attraction for this area. And, you know, I envision that people might be sitting out here, you know, eating lunch, or, you know, students and faculty can enjoy the open space with a nice little modern flair. And obviously, you know, I'll put some open grass areas in this pedestrian area as well. Maybe even just leave this area next to it open for in the future. And, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, that might not be a bad idea. But yeah, you know, it's placing down a few lamps. I always like to do that as well, because, you know, light in these areas is also very important, especially at night. Well-lit areas make people feel very safe. So something that, you know, I like to consider when I'm building these more populated areas in my city. And yeah, of course, you know, always got to put down a few trees to make this area really, I'm going to say it again, really come alive, and just, you know, be a lot more pleasant to be around. And moving on to our final infrastructure project, it is time to build one of these. The city needed another high school. And so again, you know, just kind of looking for an area where there wasn't one to begin with. And I know this is kind of close to our first high school that we placed down, kind of up there by the highway. But I thought the downtown, we can use one closer to the downtown, since there are probably going to be some residential, you know, some dense residential developments close to the downtown and close to the financial district that we have yet to build. But nonetheless, I wanted to find a spot that was, you know, not kind of an awkward space, and this seemed to fit pretty well. Just this weird kind of corner lot. I wanted, you know, I kind of reclaim one of these city blocks, and I didn't really like how like the commercial was looking there against the main road, and so I kind of wanted to, you know, I figured something could be, this space could be better utilized, is, you know, what I'm trying to say. And so yeah, placing down this high capacity high school, which is again from the pedestrian DLC. It's a really cool modern building. I think it looks really nice, and it fits really well with this. You know, it's more dense, but it's not super dense. It's not, you know, really big. It doesn't take up a big footprint, so it can fit in a smaller area like this. And with all my high schools and kind of, you know, schools in general, I like to place down basketball courts or tennis courts and some little pathways, you know, just given the just to make it, you know, the whole footprint of the school a little bit bigger. And of course, you'd imagine that, you know, the students would be on sports teams and need some places to practice. And this is just a great way to make, you know, some open space in your city as well. And, you know, I know that a lot of schools, like on the weekends, usually people from the general public can, you know, come and use the sports facilities, maybe like a outdoor track or something like that, which, you know, I don't have here, but the basketball courts, you know, or the tennis courts for sure would, you know, maybe be open to people. So it's just a all around just better benefits for the whole community. And these trees here, I think they're by Padelmo, these bigger ones. They look really good. They're a little bit higher detail than I usually go for, but for you know what it's worth, they just look really, really nice in these to be used sparingly in these more detailed areas. And always got to place down some benches, you know, outside again. Nice place to have a little lunch. All right, so now that the infrastructure projects are out of the way, it is time to hit kind of what I wanted to do in this the main bulk of this episode, and that is really expand out some of these suburbs. And so unfortunately, without the building themes mod, we kind of had to take a little bit more of a you know, plopping down the buildings and a little bit more of a meticulous approach to building these, which honestly I'm not unhappy about, because I think they turn out a little bit better than I thought. I kind of like the way, I always forget, you know, how much detail you can get by plopping down buildings, and it doesn't really take too long if you kind of know what style you want to go for and kind of what you want the area to look like. And so for this area in particular, you know, I didn't want to go too far into the hills with this suburb. I typically don't, you know, like to build too far up into the mountains, because then it sort of affects the scale of the city. If you build too high in the mountains, and the mountains look a little bit smaller, but if you kind of limit your building into the mountainside to just a little bit of the ways up, then it gives that illusion that the mountain is actually really tall, and it gives a nice border for the city. So and I kind of remember that, like, you know, when I was driving, you know, I think I mentioned before in my videos that I went on a really long road trip last summer, and part of it was through Colorado. And if you're not familiar with Colorado, it's a state in the United States. There's an area called a city called Denver, and around Denver, it's right by the Rocky Mountains, which is a mountain range that runs all the way basically from the northern United States, you know, close to Canada, all the way to the southern United States, through Colorado and through a lot of other states as well. And so you have these massive mountains that sort of border the city of Denver. And, you know, driving next to those mountains, driving through those mountains, there's not really a lot of development. You usually catch like a couple houses kind of up there, you know, and some of the lower ones, or, you know, and sometimes those people are even off the grid. But the real high mountains, I mean, there's really not many people living up there. So trying to capture the same thing here of just this neighborhood that's kind of built into the valley. And you imagine that this is like a nice place to live, very secluded, very wooded. That's why I put down a lot of those trees. And yeah, I like the way this turned out, and just kind of this little secluded neighborhood up in the hillside. So moving on to the next area, there was this little area kind of just below that where it was just kind of an awkward space. I kind of liked the way the trees were, but then again, I just thought it kind of looked a little weird to not have anything here. So I tried to build another little neighborhood here, and I think I might come back and kind of edit this one a little bit. This was kind of just a rough, something I just kind of threw together. But it does make use of the new mid-century modern content creator pack, which, as you know, a lot of these buildings in the city are the mid-century modern, are from the mid-century modern content creator pack, because I think it's awesome and it looks, you know, really modern, and you know, they're just cool looking houses. And so yeah, so I like that pack a lot, and this kind of helped ease some of the residential demand and grow the population a little bit. So I'm just trying to make better use of these areas and, you know, bring some more population into these less dense areas of the city. And this one in particular, I noticed I didn't actually make the district as big as it should be, but it'll grow, and I just figured I'd let that grow and zone that out and let that grow, and I'll come back to that later. But this area here, I really enjoyed building this. This was another one that I just kind of started, you know, plopping stuff down, and not really, there's no zoning over here, but I like actually how this turned out. And I tried to, you know, sort of make something interesting with the roads rather than just sticking with the grid, because I mean, you know, you figure this is one of those neighborhoods that's kind of just, we're a little bit farther from the downtown at this point. And so I wanted to give a little bit of a suburban feel and not get too caught up in the you know, the gridded structure of the downtown area. And so here, just using Move It to kind of adjust this road to give a nice little connection and a nice little slope up to that other intersection there. So this is sort of like a main road kind of through this suburb, and then just laying out sort of a, I know I said I wasn't going to do a grid, but it still kind of is a grid, you know, just to make the best use of the space, but just laying out these roads for some potential you know, development, so to speak. But yeah, I also like this little pathway that I kind of dragged out here. You know, I figured that this was maybe a development that kind of got interrupted by the highway, and so, you know, I shouldn't, maybe not interrupted, but, you know, the highway was built there, and now this is kind of built after the fact. And so kind of taking the shape of that highway, that little pathway, just kind of, you know, hugs along the highway there. And it's like a nice little barrier between the residential area and the highway. And then plopping down some more of those boomer homes, which is actually what they're called, yes. But they're actually supposed to be like Australian themed buildings, but I actually think they look really good in honestly any city. And I know that, you know, I'm taking a lot of influences from different places, you know, especially, I mean, you know, heavily North American, because, you know, that's where I live, but also some European influences in the sense of just how the city is built out and developed. And I kind of like this little mix of stuff, you know. I mean, at City Skylines, I'm trying to build something that I enjoy building, and I'm not trying to build, you know, a replica of a city or anything. But, you know, this is like if I were to make a city where, you know, that I think is cool. I mean, this is kind of what comes to mind for now. So I just thought I'd get creative with it and kind of combine a few different aspects from different places in a way that doesn't look super awkward. And I think this kind of captures that relatively well. And I really like this part here, you know, with these higher density apartment blocks, because it sort of gives this this Eastern European kind of vibe, in my opinion, where, you know, you see a lot of these bigger apartment buildings and these sort of more simplistic looking buildings, like potentially from, you know, the old Soviet influences. And I find the history of that, you know, just really, really fascinating. Just the idea of building areas purely for efficiency, and, you know, just like everything, it has a purpose and a functionality. And I just find the whole history of that really, really interesting. And so I really like to capture that in certain parts of this city, and, you know, kind of, and also to mention the fact that, you know, there's really not suburbs, like sprawling suburbs like there are in the States. And I think I already mentioned that earlier, but yeah, this sort of is cool because I can use some of those higher density buildings farther away from the downtown and some of these more distant, you know, neighborhoods, and it actually doesn't ruin the whole, like, I don't think it looks bad. So I'm happy with it. And, you know, now that we got the buildings put down, just as always, just adding some trees and kind of making this area, you guessed it, come alive, dragging out some fences and everything, just to, you know, make it look a little more habitable. And yeah, I always like doing this part too, because it really is the difference between a realistic looking build and something that you just kind of, you know, zoned out and forgot about. So yeah, it doesn't take too long to do this. And it adds a really, really nice touch. Just these trees and paths and parking lots are super simple, but really effective in making your city look real. Now coming over here, this was kind of started off as, you know, I had sort of envisioned something a little bit different, but what I ended up building was kind of, I was happy with. And so what I wanted to do is lay the groundwork for some suburbs that would expand up along this river in our fake north, so to speak. But yeah, just kind of going north along this river, and, you know, eventually leading into what I would imagine to be our forestry area once we reach a milestone and are able to expand the city. I want to kind of expand up here and, you know, get that area all built out. But for now, just making use of the space that we have. Again, not going too far up into the hill. I wanted to keep this, you know, if I figured if I went up too far in the hill for this part of the city, it would take away from the castle that's there. And I want to do some work kind of around this castle that was there with the map. I think it's kind of a cool little thing that the map maker built. So shout out to Teddy Radko for building this really, really cool focal point of the map. And I don't want to, you know, demolish that, and I want to use it and sort of make it sort of like a national monument or something, or, you know, a big tourist attraction. So I'm gonna, you know, I don't want to build too much around it, because I want to make some trails and, you know, kind of leave that as like an untouched focal point, sort of like it reminds me of the big castle in Edinburgh, Scotland, where it's just like the downtown city, a big park, and then there's just this big castle that's just right there, right next to the city. And it's really, really cool how it's, you know, just this untouched thing that's just up on a hill, and it's very visible, it's very prominent, and it sort of gives this cool factor. You know, it's a very cool attraction in the city. And so I kind of wanted to emulate that here. And I know that this industrial area here might kind of you know, cramp the style of the super nice castle up in the hillside, but you know, I don't care. It's kind of across the river. It's, you know, I hide it with some trees a little bit later, so it doesn't really matter that much. But yeah, again, just using these mid-century modern buildings, and something I'm trying to do too. I don't know if you noticed, I applied using Find It. You can apply these filters to, you know, for many different attributes of the buildings, and one of them is the building level. So what I like to do is, I don't have it activated at this very moment, but sometimes what I like to do, depending on the stage of the city, it's very possible that when you plop down a lot of buildings, you know, they all have different levels. And so if you put down too many high level buildings and you actually have the settings on in the game where the citizens have needs, you know, for certain services and everything, if you plop down too many high level buildings and you don't have the infrastructure to support those high level buildings, those buildings will become abandoned, those people will be unhappy, and they'll leave. And so what you can do is you could filter for some, like here I just turned it on, so now my building levels are only 1 through 4, so I could plop down buildings that are at a little bit lower level so that I avoid having to provide the infrastructure in this area for those very, very high, you know, high wealth level 5 buildings, you know, usually higher education and everything like that. So kind of making sure that the city is growing, and the buildings still can level up naturally, but they'll maintain their current appearance with, you know, the Find It mod. And so I was yeah, that's just kind of what I was doing there, is just trying to make it to where the buildings, you know, will still look good in the future, which these mid-century modern buildings are kind of timeless in a way. They always will look really good, depending on like, no matter what the level, there's really not much of a difference, to be honest. They all look really good at any level, but, you know, plopping down a little bit of the lower level ones here means that if this area is lacking in a few city services, it's not the end of the world. And since it is a little bit farther from the city, you know, it's very possible that there's not a ton of city services out this way. However, I did decide that I wanted to put down a little bit of a fire station here, and here's the other SimCity 4 asset that I put in this build, the old SimCity 4 small fire station. I love this asset. I think it looks really good in this game. The creator did a great job of, you know, converting this asset to be, you know, used in city skylines, and yeah, just, you know, detailing this area up, adding some trees, typical stuff. Just you know, kind of quick but effective ways of detailing. And, you know, it helps you not to waste too much time on any one given area. So now we can kind of just set up the infrastructure and add a couple more things and move on pretty soon from this. In this little spot here, I kind of wanted to put down a little bit of a higher density development, and, you know, I'm actually going to I end up using the same buildings that I used previously. I love these assets. I've had these since, I mean, for years, like in my collections, and they're just great looking buildings. They're not too dense. They fit in perfectly in literally any area. So I love to put these in places, you know, wherever I can. And this is definitely one of those spots that I figured would look pretty good with these. And these ones are actually vanilla assets, and I kind of like how they're green. They're sort of a unique touch to the area, and yeah, I like these a lot. So just plopping down some trees and some detail, and this just about finishes up the build for today. So I will talk to you in just a second in the live play. All right, so we are done with what I wanted to get through today. I know it doesn't look like much, but actually, to me, it looks a little bit better, you know, having this. I really like this road that kind of goes up here through the valley. I think that looks really nice. And I got to admit, you know, plopping down these buildings, yeah, it takes a little bit longer, but man, you can just get such a better looking result. You know, I mean, everything's just exactly where I want it to be. And I can, you know, kind of pick the certain style that I want to go for. So yeah, really happy with that. And then I kind of like this little development over here with these apartment buildings. I think that looks, you know, kind of nice, a nice bridge between some of the higher density and, you know, lower density buildings. It's always nice to have a little bit of a development, especially in a lot of European cities, you see a lot more of those, kind of the old Soviet style architecture, and these apartment developments that you don't typically find in American cities. So I think that's kind of a cool little touch. I like to add that. I did that over here as well. Just added a couple little higher density buildings, right by the water. I figured this might be a nice place to live, even though it's across from some industry. But for now, get this nice riverfront property, and yeah, I kind of like how that's coming together. And obviously, our border is right here for our land, but as soon as we purchase this next tile, I fully intend to expand the suburb out this way, and have some more development going on over here, maybe even some forestry industry over in this valley. That's kind of the future plan, but for now we're just going to leave that as is because we can't purchase that yet. And yeah, I'm happy with how everything turned out. We have our water treatment facility down here, and yeah, like I think I probably already mentioned, but hats off to the content creator who is creating the SimCity 4 asset. So I love this power plant. It's, it looks really good, and a little on the small side of scale, but the detail is really nice, and yeah, it looks better than the vanilla ones for sure. So I was able to give ourselves a nice little upgrade in terms of our power. So that's all done, and then this area will develop up as we get more industry and everything like that. So with that being said, thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to catch you guys in the next video where we're going to be expanding out some more of the city. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to do yet, but stick around. Yeah, it'll be good. See ya.